Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Here we go. I'm excited. The plane has left the gate. We're getting onto the runway. The control tower's like, get the hell out of here. And away we go. I'm excited for this one. Who am I talking to? There's so many things to say about him. He's an entrepreneur, a communicator, a creator, a writer, and let's be honest, storytelling badass. And pick your medium: speeches, copy, short stories, short films. He's the founder and creative director of Human Factor Media. Zack Slingsby, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Casey. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man, this is cool. I love this. I love talking to creators and folks who take the ideas of the sky and put them into things that we can consume, you know? And so with that, I want to go ahead and grab Thors Hammer and I'll pass it to you. So here you go. Here's Thors Hammer.
Okay.
Go ahead and grab that. You got it?
I got it. Thank you.
All right. Backhanded. You must have strong arms, sir, to take Thors Hammer just one hand.
Invincibly strong.
Yes. Take Thors Hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Okay. The myth that I would like to destroy. Let's see. I think that a myth that I think is now being destroyed everywhere is the idea that the best way to sell something is to talk about it. And I think that that's something we take for granted. If you want to sell something, you have to talk about it. If a brand has a product that they want to sell, they have to talk about it all the time and talk about it until people understand every possible facet and feature of it. I think that entertainment is the new advertising. I think that the Mad Men era is gone. I think that now if we want people to notice our brand, we can't run a commercial. We have to put on a show. And I think that the folks who are doing that are rewarded, and the ones who are running ads and commercials like it's still 1960 or 1980 or 1990 or even 2000 are finding out that most of their money's being wasted.
Wow. Preach. Yeah, like this is happening. This has happened already. This is like past tense almost, to the point where it's like, if you are still, I mean, Mad Men is a cool show, but man, that was a long time ago, right? Like, people are outdated if you still have that mindset, but we still see it a lot. And the fact that money is wasted, damn, why are we in this? Why is that misconception still a thing?
Well, it's hard to shake it off. I mean, all of us grew up, myself included, just understanding that commercials were a necessary irritation in life. You watched a show, and the price of watching that show was that you had to sit through a bunch of short, jingle laden, adjective laden sort of little ads, and you just kind of ignored them and talked to your friends or your family, or go in and got some more popcorn, and you came back to watch the rest of the show. So we just have this in the DNA of our culture, that interruptions and irritations and these quick sales pitches are the way that we engage one another in commerce. What's happening now, which is so cool, is brands are saying, well, we don't have to do that. It turns out we actually can get more customer loyalty. We can earn more. Credit with the people we want to sell to if we genuinely entertain them. If we bypass this strategy of disrupting their leisure and actually go to the source of where they're getting their entertainment and create what we call branded entertainment, branded content, short films, creative efforts to entertain them instead of annoy them. And we think it's an amazing time to be creative people, because now brands are turning out to be these stages for creativity. And that obviously wasn't always the case.
Brands are stages for creativity. Damn. How are we even talking? This is great, man. What the way you even describe it, you must have been a speechwriter in a past life. We'll get to that. But so true, the idea of going to the source. When you're mentioning that, it just made me think of Red Bull, right?
Yeah,
if you had an ad, sometimes you need a Red Bull. It gives you wings, right? Let's go. But if you had an ad in the middle of your favorite show, they always come just at the wrong moment, right? Like something terrible's happened, someone's crying, and they're like, "Hey, how's your day going?" You're like, guys, show some empathy here, man. Like they should time the ads to what's happening. Like, oh, did little Timmy just die? Here, like, here's a Red Bull. Like, but so that interruption is out, to your point. But the idea of the fact that on my Apple TV, there's a Red Bull TV channel that I watch all the time. They're like
There you go.
jumping off of cliffs, cliff diving, they're rock climbing. Like they got me all day on that.
Oh, dude, they're fantastic. And the little documentaries they're making, there's a group
oh my gosh, dude,
that does their documentaries that we've engaged with a little bit, called Just So. And they're amazing, and they're pros. They're like the closers in this field. We're coming up, but they're like amazing, like, and they do Red Bull's work. And to hear them talk about it, elevating branded content to the level of genuine entertainment, it's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. And then it's not a problem. I don't have that weird barter. And to be honest, like I've paid for YouTube Red for as long as I can remember, years now.
Yeah.
Because the stupid ads were too stupid. They weren't entertaining enough. And they just interrupted me.
Yeah.
And it was worth the $12 to YouTube to just not have to ever deal with that ever again.
Do you have cable?
I do have cable, and it blows my mind. There's still ads on it.
Most people don't have cable anymore. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, that's true.
They cut the cord. The cord cutters are growing at a crazy rate. And all these traditional ways that we consume content are changing really quickly. I mean, I'm far from the first one to point that out. I mean, I think everyone's making or changing their strategies accordingly. But I think it's a really exciting time for branded creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to do that at some point. I might have to get rid of the cable thing. I keep it for like being able to get the sports games, but I know that there's a way to do that. Maybe you just pay for NFL or something, and then so there's a way
if Chris Rock hadn't gotten smacked, how many people do you think would be talking about the Oscars right now?
Oh, yeah. 13, maybe.
It's like, like those big cultural moments, they still pop, but they usually pop the next day on a short video. Like most people didn't watch that live. They 100%. saw somebody sent them a meme,
Yeah, 13 people watched that live.
Yeah.
13 million watched the clip over and over again of the guy getting slapped. Was that staged or not? What do you think?
No, I don't think it was staged.
I don't think it was staged. It's great branded entertainment, though.
That was great. Do you think it was staged?
Yeah, I go back and forth on this. It's kind of a conspiracy theory. But here's the thought that maybe makes it potentially like it was staged, is because it's almost a perfect situation. The joke was bad, but not too bad. The slap was bad, but it wasn't a punch. So it was like this mediocre on both ends, right?
Yeah.
And you can take either person's side, and it's very well balanced. So maybe it's just, hey, life created a well-balanced situation, but it almost seems too balanced. Like the joke wasn't that bad, and then also the slap wasn't that bad until he started swearing at him.
Well, that's the part. Once you see that, you're like, it's tough to fabricate that level of emotional intensity.
He could do it though.
He could do. He's an actor. He's an actor. And Chris Rock ate that slap. That was amazing. He didn't even put his hand, like, he just shook it off in like 2 seconds.
To his credit, it's almost
that was
fake,
phenomenal,
right?
Yeah, maybe.
Because you're like, what? He didn't even move or anything. He just sort of, I don't know. So you don't think you think it's real?
Bit. Yeah, I think it was real. I don't think I don't think Chris Rock knew it was coming. Because he didn't have a joke. He didn't have any jokes. He was flabbergasted.
He was
he was stunned, and Will Smith seemed incredibly volatile sitting in the rows there. And I don't think that was fake either. And they have obvious, severe, and possibly very troubling marital problems. So they, I do think that was all genuine. Gonna get sued by Will Smith's lawyers, but yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? I won't press charges as long as you shucked me a couple million from your bankroll there, friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you could go to jail. Let me know. Man, so talk to me about, we know why this is happening. It's hard to shake with your words. The entertainment's the here. I love the way you said that the brands are the stages, and the branded content and the films are replacing the old day ads. How do we approach this, right? How do you make it? Maybe you've shucked it off. You realize ads aren't really performing like they used to. How do you make your foray into this?
Sure. Well, look, first, it's not like it's an easy decision when you're on this precipice of cultural change. Like it's not like it's obvious that every brand should do this strategy, because it's not. Some brands will say they have a mousetrap that's working for them digitally. They have, we talk to brands all the time who say this, right? They're running ads. They have a positive ROAS, which to people who don't know is return on ad spend. And so they if they're getting a 2x or 3x or 4x ROAS, it's very hard to disturb the comfort of that pattern to go out and take a chance on something creative. By definition, creativity is hard to systematize and to get right. So you're automatically in the realm of chance taking once you decide that you're going to go out and do something that would be way more story driven, way more narrative driven, way more subject to the whims of taste, let's say. So I understand that. I empathize with all that. You're also, when you're getting into that, 9 out of 10 shows fail. So, why wouldn't your show possibly not do that great? It's like all true, and so the question is only, is there a possible reward in there that is so immeasurably worth the chance? And most case studies in this realm demonstrate that there is. When you're comparing head to head, as we have with our clients, a branded narrative brand video versus a sales video, all the metrics are overwhelmingly in favor of the story. So I guess that comes to, how do we make a story and not an ad, right? And why should you do it? I can pause there if there's anything that you want me to dive into further before we move on to that.
Yeah, what isn't there to dive into that? I think that the follow-up question I was sitting on was the idea of, do you have to pick one? Can you do both?
Sure. You should do both. We make both. I mean, look, we say on our thing, we won't make ads, but if we're making a campaign and the campaign is narrative driven, can you create, if you're doing 4 or 5 minute episodes, let's say, can you create a few 15 to 30 second cuts that act as the gateway to all that other stuff, and so in other words, you're making your long form stuff, you're doing something that's more narratively sophisticated. Can you also create short content that can act as brand awareness, or maybe even, lower, would you say lower on in the funnel to drive sales? Absolutely. You should. I mean, it's not like you shouldn't ever have anything that talks about what you do. You need to do that. But the question is that a primary strategy, or is that a complementary strategy? And we would advise that it be the latter. Yeah. So it's not, I think that you first wanted to decide, do you care about reaching people? Because some brands really don't. They don't care. They want to be there right when you're at a purchasing decision. We spoke to someone who was running the campaigns of a pretty famous or pretty well-known mattress company, right? And they were like,
like an old school mattress company or like a new school?
Modern, snazzy, cool, comfortable, like,
what does it rhyme with?
Well, very well integrated digitally, and had very sleek branding. And they were like, people don't know who we are, and we don't care. We care about if they know when they're Googling for mattresses, can they find us first? And they're putting their whole back into that. And I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong to do that, but the question is, does that strategy have an ending, have an expiration date? And in most cases, when you find an ad asset that works, it works for a while. Yeah. And then the cycle of pumping money in to receive an ROI eventually runs out, and you've got to find a new piece of content or a new audience or a new demo. And, and these are all highly pressurized stakes. So it's like, I understand why you would be tempted to just do what's working in the short term, but I think we just should be clear that it is a short-term strategy.
It comes to mind some of the things like some of the car insurance commercials, right? Geico is constantly swapping in a funny little narrative about something. Yes, there's a gecko, but it's not always really highlighted, and so they're not really dependent on one. And I've heard conversations where other ones, like, don't get too dependent on flow or on a main character, or even the guy who really is a breakout character for the body wash, Old Spice, right?
Yeah.
Had some hits, but they were smart to move on and not center their entire brand around that one story, because to your point, eventually it's an old story.
Sure. Yeah. And just some of the best, this morning we had a call with an agency partner of ours who was going over their most successful ads. They were showing us just examples for a different project. And they said this one got us our record ROAS, 63x return on investment from, they put 40 grand in, they got like $2 million out. It lasted about 3 months. And then it went down to 5x, then it went down to 2x, and then it went to 0. And it's amazing. It's amazing how you just run. I mean, you probably know I mean, how many times have you finally found the magic way to turn on the funnel or to turn on the tap of, and then eventually for whatever reason, it sputters out. It just doesn't hold. The audience dries up, or the retargeting isn't as effective, or the messaging
sometimes
gets
it's
stale.
slow, right?
Yeah,
it's like a slow death, which is why some of these companies are
right.
still dependent on it. And it reminds me of, spam email or cold calling or direct mail. Hey, it worked, or it still works at 2%. So we'll just hire 1,000 more people so that 2% can be a larger number. Tricky. And then also your description of the waning response to an ad reminds me of like what happens to a LinkedIn ad in a day, when you're like, oh, it's our best campaign, and tomorrow it's terrible. So you don't want to put yourself out there in front of the CEO, because it's going to deteriorate quickly.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. And I'm just going off of what's obvious in the market. Like I'm on rocky ground when I start to talk about marketing, because I'm not a marketer, and my background's not in marketing. My background's in creative world. And so I tried to find ways to vindicate that the claim that I'm very biased in making, that you're much better off doing docu-series, entertaining content, comedy driven stuff, narrative, like the stuff that we like to make, I think is much better off in the market than these short-term strategies. And I think that we're just borne out by data and testimony, and the best brand, the most most celebrated brands are the ones that are doing this. And so there's a correlation there that you just can't, ignore.
How do you do it? What does it entail? What does the correct solution entail?
Okay. So let's think about, how do you know you're making a story and not an ad, let's say?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So let's break it down. So a story, first thing I would say is a story is not about a product. Okay. You're not telling a story if the punchline of the story is the product at the end of the video, or in our case, video, right? A story is fundamentally about people. E.M. Forrester wrote in Aspects of a Novel the difference between a story and a plot, right? A story is the king died and then the queen died. Okay. Those are events. They happen in sequential order. That's a story. The difference between that and a plot is the king died and then the queen died of grief. So now you're connecting the events, and that's the next step. Is you have momentum, you have narrative momentum, because you have events that matter to one another and matter to a conclusion about human beings. Story at its most basic level is things are happening. When you watch I don't know if you're a fan of old movies, but it's unbelievable to watch movies from the 40s and 50s, the noirs, because they're much different than the movies that are made now. Movies that are made today are very cerebral, and one or two events will be stretched out over 2 hours about, and then obviously there's the other extreme of that. There are action movies that everything's happening all the time, but a basic good quality drama that would get recognized, like at the Oscars or something, it's usually about a couple of things. It's very character driven, and it's spaced out. The old movies, it's amazing how much story they pack into 90 minutes or 80 minutes. Like stuff happens in every scene. And the whole idea that was, we're getting off the subject here, but just as an exercise,
it's cool.
The whole idea that is you would pitch movies based on how good the story was. And you go into a room with a bunch of people smoking cigars, and they would say, "What's your thing about?" And they would say, "Well, this dame meets this guy and she breaks his heart and runs to Vegas and takes the fortune back here. And then he catches up with her. And then 20 minutes later, her cousin comes in and it turns out he was a communist. And then, so they have all these different elements. And the thing is, how many elements can you pack in and still have it make sense and have great dialogue and have memorable moments and scenes? But the conceit of every film was that so much was going to happen. And you see it shows up in many classics. I mean, Casablanca, Maltese Falcon, I don't know if you've seen it, but they are just like one thing after another.
Yeah.
So we
Whereas
have a lot to learn from that.
modern day, do the same description, but of a modern day movie.
The kind of archetype for a modern day movie.
Yeah. Like,
Okay,
if you're pitching a modern movie, room full of people, they don't have cigars, probably.
No. Well,
Non-smoking.
it's interesting. David Mamet was on Joe Rogan recently, and he talked about what was wrong. Yeah, it was talked about what was wrong with why movies were dying. And I don't know if people will say that movies aren't, and people have different opinions on this, but I agree with his conclusion. And one of the things he said was that movies used to be made by people who had a hunch that the story was compelling enough to be successful, and it would be a studio head, and they would say, okay, you seem like you have some promise as a writer or as a filmmaker. Here's a couple $1 million, go make it. And I'm going to try to sell it and make a little bit more than what you made it for. And now they're made by boardrooms of people who are trying to plug very specific criteria into certain slots and hope that something comes out that can be sold in very specific ways into very specific markets. And many of those are overseas too. So it's been corporatized. And obviously old school Hollywood left a lot to be desired. I don't think anyone wants to go back to some of those models, but I do think that there's something missing, some texture of what comprised serious drama and serious introspective art form does seem to be missing, writ large from the movie industry today.
And sometimes the archetype was actually, it was there, but it wasn't in your face and was sort of hidden and it was revealed slowly versus, I mean, it's not even camp, but it's like, oh God, look this. And then, oh, there's going to be a car scene. The one that killed me was Ready Player One. Have you read that? Read the book or heard of the book?
No.
I had heard of it, but I saw on Audible that, a lot of these sci-fi books have like 400 reviews, 500, 100. This one had like 14,000 5-star reviews. So I was like, I should probably check this out. Will Wheaton narrated it, did a great job. And it was a really good book, really good book. So when the movie came out, of course there's going to be a movie.
Sure.
There was a car chase scene in the first 5 minutes. There is not a car chase scene in that movie, nor should there ever be. There was no need for it. And so, but like they just literally turned that into a trite, formulaic car chase scene. And the fact that every movie has one, I would just like one to not have a car chase scene. Please, for the love of God, do it elsewhere. Or I found in the old movies too, I know we're ranting on this, but they could convey a lot without swearing. So I've even found that like right now, our kids are watching like Murder, She Wrote and even like what was that one in Hawaii with like Magnum PI? Guess what? When someone died, there's a body on the ground, maybe a dribble of blood out of their mouth, and you're like, ooh, they died, and like let's figure it out. You didn't have to see it, and they didn't have to swear to create drama or anger or controversy. So
they were relying on story. They knew they had good story.
They were relying on story, right? Instead of the decoration or the icing around it. Not that you can't swear, but like you didn't need it. It was superfluous to the whole situation because there was so much already there.
Modern movies rely on so much in addition to story, and some of it we're better off for, but some of it I think we're way worse off. I mean, now we have these amazing cinema experiments in cinematography, and it's a lot more visually captivating and engaging. But some filmmakers will hang their hat on that, and you say, well, okay, but what is this about? Am I enjoying any of what I'm seeing, or is it horribly, tedious? And then, to your point about the old stuff, yeah. It's so true. It's very strange. Here's an interesting thing. So some of the independent filmmakers who are doing really interesting stuff today, they have to do it outside the mainstream, because to your point, like there's a trap there that once you enter into that world, all these other, like you said, the sprinkling or the decor that goes on a story, they know that their ideas and their visions are going to be subject to that. And so the Duplass brothers are a great example of this. This is actually very relevant to our conversation. So the Mark and Jay Duplass are independent filmmakers, and they have done some amazing stuff, and they're very creative guys. And they made just their own movies with like a very old school movie count, like an independent film camera for years. And then they got some attention from some distributors, and now they can do a lot of their stuff. So Marvel offered them $100 million to make 3 movies for them. They said, we'll give you guys $100 million, more money than they had ever probably been, has been available to them to make their films. They said no. They turned them down. And they went instead, not making this up, and they created an agency called DP Donut, which is a branded entertainment agency. So they literally turned down $100 million of Hollywood money to go make short films for brands, because they thought that was going to be a more creative experience and a more creatively freeing experience than taking $100 million of Marvel's money and making movies that were going to be subject to studio conditions.
Yeah.
It's very telling.
Yeah. That it's amazing. That I'm not respect to those guys for doing that. And you could tell it was not about the money, it was about the craft, you know, and about the story,
right?
About the tagline. And have you done like Game of Thrones? Have you seen any of those? Or
yeah.
So like the final season, had you heard about the controversy around that, or
the controversy around the final season?
Yeah.
Although I don't know. What is it?
Did you like the final season? Did you watch the end?
Yeah, I watched it. I liked it. I don't remember fully, but I remember I know people hated it.
Yeah, no, I hated it. And
why did you hate it?
I also, in between the seasons, I like listened to the books, which obviously had even more detail. But no, they did such a fantastic job of it. Until the final season. Apparently, the two writer producers for that, who I used to have mad respect for, there was talks about having them launch a Game of Thrones type show all around Star Wars.
Okay.
So they had an upcoming contract to do a multi-season series around Star Wars. So they're literally, their brains in the final season of this epic story that needs to be told shifted.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, shifted over to let's launch this crappy Star Wars show. And then in the end, what you see is kind of a rush job at the end, and instead of telling the story, like, oh wow, all these people die and it's all resolved sort of at the end, and people kill people, and it's like, wait, what just happened? And the worst villain of all time, of all history ever, was like killed like pretty quickly. And you're like, wow, oh, that's all it took. I'm not sure why I was so worried, but it's because they had shifted their focus elsewhere.
Wow.
You know, they took that 100 million essentially, and of course that series never even launched. So it was kind of like
David Benioff.
Yes, Benioff.
Interesting background on that guy. He was an English teacher, and then he was trying to be a novelist, and he eventually wrote a novel that was published and made into a movie called 25th Hour with Ed Norton. And the novel was very good, and the movie was excellent. And then he, I think, wrote Troy, and then Troy is really good. And then that was very successful. And then he got into Game of Thrones, I guess, from the success of that. I've always thought he was a great writer.
Then became a complete sellout.
And then ignored the final season of his opus.
Yeah, it doesn't help that his writer is still sitting on finishing the rest of those books. I don't know if he'll ever finish those now at this point, but he needs to, so that we can just remake the end.
George R.R. Martin. Yeah, he hasn't finished those. Come on, man. What are you doing?
I'll bring us back. I took us on a tangent, but I appreciate you working this out with me. We were talking story versus ad.
Yeah.
And we talked product, people. What else makes the story versus the ad? How do we know?
So I think we said a story is not about a product. Okay. I think that's axiomatic at this point.
People
I think, is this appealing? I think it's a question you want to ask is this appealing to a human being or to a customer? Deals, discounts, limited time special offers. This kind of language talks to people as market functions, consumers. Story about a person who does things and there's consequences and there's emotions are evoked and passions and morals. This kind of a journey appeals to you, human being. Now you say, well, we're a cereal company. How the hell do we do that? It's like, okay, fair, but
Fair question.
Fair question. We want to talk about our ingredients and the low cholesterol stuff and how much sugar the lack of sugar content in our cereal. Okay, but what is this? What space of the human experience does cereal occupy? It's breakfast. And it's the time of day when your family gets to be together before you're rushing into a million other places.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of the quiet moment of home before the kind of uncertainty of the world. And so I would much rather see a 4-part, web series on the beautiful moments that can be exchanged in that in over that setting than I would read about how you've managed to eliminate, preservatives from this recipe. So I think that we're selling ourselves short when we say we don't know how to attach these things to a human narrative. I think sometimes that's just about figuring out, where does this product intersect with ordinary lives and how do we tell a story there?
Let's take that further. So, I mean, it's a great example because it's challenging because it's cereal. Preservatives. If the question is, can I convey that we don't use preservatives? Is the answer that's the wrong thing to convey, or is the answer we can figure it out? Like, were they just not thinking the right direction by saying preservatives? Should they be thinking something more holistic, or what's the take?
Yeah, I know. I don't think. I just have a radical view on this, which is that I don't think you're convincing people with adjectives anymore. And so you can trace advertising back super. It has unbelievable roots, right? Like I think they have transcripts of what really amounts to ad copy that comes out of the Song Dynasty. Okay, so we're talking about so long ago that we're guessing a lot of what they used this for and what it was, but some of this stuff that they found inscribed on rock walls was sharp needles, down the street, can be used for X, Y, and Z, definitely reliable, stuff where resources were so precious that we had to convey important information very succinctly, and it had to be reliable information, and it had to describe exactly what you were going to get. Okay, now we live in a time where things are not that hard to come by, where I have a million choices, where I'm going to basically assume the reliability of the basic competency of a product. I more or less assume that one razor at least going to work. It might not be as good as another razor, but it's basically going to work. It's going to be as competitive with its counterparts in certain ways. If I buy a car, I assume that anti-lock brakes are going to be in there now. So this idea that we had to, this thing that kind of came out of our history where we have to communicate the very specific value of products, I think is antiquated.
Yeah.
So
like you put preservatives in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And right. Like the famous we're talking about Mad Men, Don Draper, when he says, how do you make your cigarettes? And the guy says, well, we toast them, and they're okay, that's it. Marlboro toasted. And he said, well, all our competitors do that too. And he goes, no. Their cigarettes cause cancer. Yours are toasted. Right. It's like that is out. That joke is out. And
that's out.
So I have the view that product differentiation is just not it's a minimum cost of entry. It's not a long-term strategy to differentiate your brand.
Okay. So on the consumer side, what about on the B2B side? What about a company that launches podcasts for other companies?
Be more specific, Casey.
A company that launches B2B podcasts for
Well, why do you we'll turn it back on you. Why do you do this? I mean, you're doing something that is not, you're not checking a box. I mean, everything you're doing here is thought out and passionate, engaging, and you obviously love doing this. I mean, so how'd you get into this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've definitely thought about that a lot. It comes down to the connections. Um, Literally, like we'll sit down, we're gonna have this like concentrated conversation. We've had a prep call. So I feel like by the end, you kind of know somebody. And I really like that. And I don't think we have that. And you even mentioned the idea of the distractions. Oftentimes we're distracted. Even if we're in the same room having coffee, you might be on your phone for a second. I might, we might check. So with a podcast, you are just focused on someone, you're listening actively. Otherwise, people are going to know that you're like, you can't check your email, you can't check your phone. So I love that it facilitates human connection. So that's really our why.
Facilitates human connection. I mean, that's a great why. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the business rationale is like you're going to grow because like you talk to your ideal customer and then they want to buy from you. And that's fantastic. But the step before that is what I really love, which is the fact that you make a connection with someone. And of course you want to work together. Of course you want to buy from each other and refer each other around and all the wonderful things that happen. But it all starts with that connection.
Well, so you're helping prove my thesis, which is that, we said at the beginning, the best way to sell something is to talk about it. That's the myth, right? The best way to sell something is to talk about it. You're saying that what you do is try to facilitate human connection, and that sales is a byproduct. And I think that that's the way, that's the mindset shift that I think brands are better off making.
Gotcha. So yeah, because there's this sort of tendency to want to, or to need to say, connect with your customer, like your company will grow, like launch a podcast and you will grow and you will have sales and ROI. But really the story is that you will have connections that will invite you to go hiking with them, and you go out to dinner together and you'll introduce yourselves to each other's families.
And they know you as a human being beund whatever you're doing. There's an old definition of commerce, economic exchange. What you say, well, what is commerce? We look to lower uncertainty about one another so that we can exchange value. And that's what so much media is doing now, especially at the individualized level. And there's a lot of downsides to this. I mean, living online like we all do is, can be horrible. But there's a couple of upsides. And one of them is that you can, if you use these things the right way, you can show who you are to more people at once.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's my short film?
Let's talk afterwards. I'll go
talk afterwards.
Yeah, let's talk.
You don't want to give it away to the competitors. I'm with you.
Listen, we'll see. But no, I think
but I hear what you're saying. So the same pattern applies here, where, and I even drew a line between the story and the ad, and I feel like the same thing applies for marketing emails, stuff that I've taught other people. It's like you're either personal or you're professional, but you can't blend both. People, if they try to make a story, and if you drop some kind of ad thing in there, I bet it just ruins it, right? It just like it just detracts from the whole thing, because now it's an ad, because you couldn't stay pure, or can you?
Look what the masters are doing in it. I mean, the Yeti. What does Yeti do? Presented by Yeti. What does Red Bull do? Red Bull TV presents. Kate Spade, Mountain Dew, MeUndies, Wells Fargo shorts, Chick-fil-A has these shorts. I mean, all these guys, they tell you that they did it because they deserve credit because they did do it, and then they get out of the way and they let you enjoy the story. And there's no real difference in that. I mean, what are you getting? What are you not getting from that you are getting from if you're MetLife creating, having the MetLife Stadium, or if you're Kodak having Kodak Theater? Brands have this itch of sponsorship, which is supposed to, I guess, create brand awareness. And that's basically all they could in the past. That would be the most you could hope for. But now when you're the purveyor of the content, you're the producer of the content, you get all of that credit and then some, because you are in effect, you're the producer of their what they're enjoying, the entertainment that they're choosing to consume. And you see Ricky Gervais come out a couple of years ago at the Golden Globes, and he was talking to tech companies because tech companies were the ones who had made all the content that people loved that year.
Yeah, I was actually just watching a clip of that again.
Yeah, it was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious.
He just roasted everybody, man.
He crushed it. Yeah,
and nobody slapped him, huh? Like Tim Cook didn't get up there and like.
Yeah, Will Smith wasn't there.
Yeah, yeah. Will Smith wasn't there. Hashtag. Awesome. So okay, so I feel like we've got to separate the story from the ad. Any other best practices for creating branded content?
Yeah. So appealing. So story about a story, not a product, appealing to a person, not a customer.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could ask yourself basic questions. Are you in a rush? Are you trying to cram? Is there a narrator's voice cramming words into 15 seconds of video that all has to be said very quickly because someone is going to skip it as soon as they can? That's not, that's a completely intrusive experience. That's not in any way anything that's trying to really engage you. And the idea, one thing that people will always bring up on every call, unfailingly, is the idea that content has to be very short. It has to be 20 seconds, 30 seconds. That's all the attention span people have now. That has been completely debunked by the proliferation and the popularity of podcasts. Podcasts go on for hours, and the completion rates are staggering. Joe Rogan does 4-hour podcasts.
Yeah.
And he's the most popular podcaster on the planet. And so how does that happen? It's like, I don't think that we don't want to stick with content. I don't think that stereotype is correct. I think we don't want to be disrupted in our consumer experiences to be told about something we didn't ask to hear about. We've just become way too sophisticated at circumventing anything that is out of the way of where we want to go. So I would say if you're in a rush with your message, you're probably also going down the wrong road.
So true, man, because those YouTube ads, if you get them to go away in 30 seconds, you don't have to pay for it. And
that was crazy.
It just feels like a mechanism. Like you can just smell that. If your little message to connect with someone on LinkedIn has a call to action, why does it have a call to action? You sound like a marketing campaign. Stop it. Right. So, I mean, does that follow true, especially with this content? Is there it's presented by, but it's not like your bar of soap pops up at the end or your software pops up at the end?
I just don't know. It depends on all the specifics. Like,
Okay.
you can, there's nothing wrong with saying, and I don't think in any context, what you do and what you sell, right? You want people to know that. And you always want to be like MetLife is very good at this in the sense when they run they run little vignettes of small businesses on their landing pages. And then at the bottom, they have solutions for your insurance business needs. So not at the bottom of the video, but literally the landing pages at the top, they have the stories. And then at the bottom, and I get targeted with these things, and I click on the landing page and I watch the stories. And then at the bottom, here's how much it is to cover this amount of, they give you pricing options down below. Now, you didn't ask for those, but they didn't put them in the story. They're just using the story as a gateway to their other products. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't think that, I don't think it's like dishonest to try to sell your products at all. We're all doing it. We're all, we're all agreed on this experiment called capitalism. And we're trying to figure out what I think we're at a time where we're reckoning with what's not working and what's driving people crazy in their consumer habits and what's effective. And I'm just making, the case that I think the deeper in the background your sales strategy is, the more effective it generally is.
What about product placement inside your story?
Branded. So there's two different things. Branded integration, where you're making content and then your brand integrates in some way, like how like Barstool does this a lot, where they'll work in some alcohol brand into the content, but the point of the content is not that alcohol. And then other product placement is they don't even mention it. It's just they're just using it during the thing.
Are both okay?
I mean, not my world. It's really not. I don't know. I mean, I know that.
No, it's a story.
Do I think it diminishes the story value? No, I don't. I mean, I think that here's the dial, right? So if the dial is set to, let's say the dial is set to 0. Here will be an example of the dial being set to 0. Like, HP or Staples makes The Office. Like Staples makes the show, The Office, paper company, The Office, right? So that would be like, we're going to make a comedy. and we're not going to ask you for anything. We're not going to ask you to buy our products. We're just going to make this comedy, and we're going to make it go viral, and we're going to get big talent to be in it. And if you fall in love with it, great. And if they do, then they tell all their friends, if you see the Staples made The Office, it's amazing. And the Staples benefit from that? I think absolutely. I think it's been proven absolutely. And you look at the novelty value of places that have content associated with it. The cab driver told me that after Sideways with Paul Giamatti came out, Sonoma in California was never the same. Napa Valley was never the same after that movie. The tours went through the roof after people started watching that movie, and they come there. They want to see where things were filmed, where was the winery where Paul Giamatti dumped the thing of wine on his face. And they, same with, the cafe that they ate at every day in Seinfeld on the upper east side, upper west side of Manhattan. And, auto engineering, enrollment in auto engineering skyrocketed after Fast and Furious.
No kidding.
Yeah. It became a real serious option. Culture has a bigger impact on commerce than we can understand. I mean, we understand it in a way because brands just want to attach themselves to that. They just want to go along for the rise. This is cool. Just mention our product at the beginning. Just talk about it. But that's a lagging strategy. A proactive strategy would be, let's partner up with guys like the Duplass brothers and make something that might move the needle, and we actually own it, and we produce it and we release it, and let's see how it goes. So that would be an example of setting the dial to 0. And then maybe you would set the dial further up if you would say, okay, Baskin & Robbins is going to make a short film about, kids the first time they have ice cream. It's going to be 4 parts, and we want to see, their faces and their reactions, and we want to see their parents' reactions, and we're going to do profile pieces on them. But it's going to be at Baskin & Robbins, and they're going to eat our ice cream, and we're going to put the names of the flavors on the bottom of the screen. It's like, okay, well, you set the dial to 10, but you didn't dilute the emotional value of any of that. You just integrated your product. Right. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's just about where you want to put the dial and what you hope to get out of it.
Is there any benefit to having is the more pure, the more 0 it is, the better, or just be careful it doesn't get to 80?
Right. It's a goal. It's so specific. It's goals, it's budget, it's what level the company is. If you're one of these house brands, I think your dial you should go down to 0. You should do the Red Bull model. Lexus has a theater page. They're making comedy shows. They're not they're not pushing Lexus car convertibles into the, maybe they are putting them in the shows, but they're not it's all about the entertainment. The entertainment value is paramount. Yeah. If you're a middle tier brand and you can't afford to pump $1 million into a TV show, maybe you're going to spend $100,000 or $50,000. You want some shots with your stuff, with your coffee cup in there or something. I understand that. I don't begrudge that decision at all. And I think it's smart in that case. So I think it's goals, size of the company, the extent of the commitment. Sometimes they want to do 1 3-part series, and if it doesn't work, they want to know they at least got some ad assets out of that too.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it's very specific.
It's crazy, man. I love this. This is a fascinating topic, and I love the direction it's going. Just the idea of entertainment instead of interruption, and I think to sort of wrap that up, I actually don't mind product placement because it's so much. The plot continues. It doesn't interrupt anything. It just sort of, and it's like, oh, look, there's a bag of, sometimes you notice it, sometimes you don't.
Exactly.
But, I'll take that over interruption any day.
Oh, absolutely. No question. No question. And the more you trust the content, these podcasters, there's the circle of LA podcast comedians. They everything they sell on their shows sells because they trust them. Entertainment value is so authentic, and they work it in. Sometimes they're very funny about it. They work it in a really organic way. And the Barstool guys, they sell everything that they bring on there. Their stuff is, they really commit, and they want their partners to do well. And so people, they don't think they're being fooled or tricked. They think, okay, these guys have found a really interesting way to integrate what they want to sell.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, my next question really is, who are you? How do you know all these
This
things?
guy.
Can you take me back in time? Little Zach days. What was it like growing up? Did you know that you were going to be destined for entrepreneurship and story creation and all these amazing adventures?
Um, did I know that I was being destined for amazing adventures? I hoped. I was obsessed with stories. I discovered literature was, my thing, but I discovered that like when I first got to college, I really wasn't a good reader. I read, but I wasn't a great reader. Didn't sustain reading habits until I got to college.
Where'd you grow up?
In New York, outside the city and suburb of Rockland County. And my family's all been lifelong New York, from the Bronx, and from my dad's family was from Brooklyn. And I from a super young age, I loved whatever they would read me, stories they would read me, and I would try to write them on my own. And I would try to write, I would do what I heard, and just write my own versions of things. And then I fell in love with TV in a very unhealthy way for years, and wrote like before binge, like I was the original binge watcher.
That was you. You're
Like
patient zero.
it wasn't a thing in culture. And it was like not, like Netflix really made us all like that. But
Yeah.
I would get like my friends would be like, "What are you doing? Just gonna watch like 14 episodes?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just sit here." DVD sets, like I had DVD cases, and no one else was doing that, and it was like it was unhealthy, and it was unhealthy.
Sure.
It's unhealthy now, and I actually don't do it now because I realize it's terrible. But now everyone else is doing it, and I stopped. But I from like 11 or 12 years old, I just watched all these shows and then tried to write my own scripts of them.
Kind of like fan fiction kind of thing. You'd like
Yeah,
sort of
fan fiction of
use
whatever.
those characters.
Law and Order,
yeah.
Sopranos, West Wing, anything.
Jag.
What's that? Jag? No, I don't wear any Jag. But anything that I thought was so cool. Yeah, MacGyver. I thought was so cool, like Tarantino movies. I would just like I tried to write my own stuff, and then so I just write screenplays all the time, and then I became a little more normal in late high school. Not very, but a little bit, and then I got to college. I was an English major in college, and realized that you could be like you could do creative writing. I didn't really know about that. And so I did that. And then after, I had a professor who encouraged me to apply to an MFA program, Master of Fine Arts program, which I did in late at senior year of college. And I got into the New School MFA program in Manhattan, and lived there for a few years. And I interned and had short jobs at various literary agencies and publishing houses.
Wow.
And mainly my job there was to read through the slush pile. So I was in my early 20s. I was writing my own novel while I was in the MFA program, and then working at these agencies at the same time. And I would read their stuff that was getting rejected all day. I would just read thousands and thousands of pages of manuscripts that weren't going to make it. Most cases weren't going to make it. And I would try to write my own stuff at the same time.
Did you see any patterns of the bad stuff that came in? What made it bad? And then that few percent that was good.
It's such a good question. I don't know. I don't think it was all bad. Here's the real answer. Okay. And this is not, I don't know how, it doesn't matter. I mean, no one cares what I say, so I'll say this anyway. So I can't, what am I going to know? It doesn't matter.
No one's listening. Don't even worry about it.
To me,
like
so it's
our
fine.
parents are listening. And
yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. It wasn't all bad. There's an incredible streak of editors will admit, and agents will admit, that they have to personally fall in love with something. They have to fall in love with it. So it could have great qualities and just they don't want it for whatever reason. And some of it was bad. Some of it was either poorly written or hackneyed or contrived, or they had a character that bad writing you can see through right away. You know what they're trying to make you feel, and you see through bad writing. So there is a lot of that. There's a lot of slush. But then there's also stuff that's, if people fall in love with a craft, especially literature, which is so damn hard, if you fall in love with that, it's likely that you have some capability and that you'll hone a better capability the longer you do it. And a lot of them had. people, they would get an agent or not sell, as eventually happened to me, or you would get in the door and get meetings, but not get an agent, or you got tired of sending it out and get tired of the no's and you stop sending it out. I think there's a lot of gifted people that the world will never hear from because they get in their own way, or they're too discouraged, or they think the avenues for success are too narrow. And all those
Didn't
things
Harry
are
Potter
possible.
get rejected by like 15 people?
Hundreds, I think. She got rejected by everybody. And I think I'm getting the example right. I think J.K. Rowling, I know she was very poor and she would sit at a coffee house and write these things. And I think she had a very hard time getting in the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's all those stories like that.
I just Google it. It was rejected 12 times.
12, that's it?
Yeah.
That's not that bad.
True, right? It's just
Moby Dick. They found Moby Dick in a drawer when Herman Melville died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did not enjoy any fanfare in his life.
Well, I once had a play publishing company, and because I liked theater and I wrote a play, but then I thought this would be fun until I realized the majority of it was reading through a lot of plays. Yeah. And most of them weren't good, but to your point, there were some good ones in there, and that became hard. I could see how a Harry Potter could slip through if,
of course,
you just didn't give it a shot. You're tired.
You're reading all these things. I sat with a guy on a train who turned out to be a senior producer in the Raiders of the Lost Ark production company. So he had literally been involved in Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, all these things, helped greenlighting them and get them off the ground. And he said his job for years was to look for quality scripts. And he said, I said, well, at this point I think I was just in the MFA program or just coming out. And I said, do you have any advice? And he goes, get lucky. He said, he goes, it literally depended on the mood I was in and the time of day that I read it, whether I wanted to give it a real chance or not. Sometimes you read 2 pages, might be good. You get a phone call and you just don't read it. And, he said it was incredibly based on mood and timing and subjectivity. And it's all true. There's a study that in London, the High Court in London, if they come after lunch, they're hearing cases for clemency, and after lunch they grant the proportion of cases that were granted was 70% higher than if it was right before lunch, because they were cranky and hungry.
Because they're freaking hungry. They want to go eat. Get me out of here.
These are people's lives. It's ridiculous.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, clearly that guy wasn't involved in the Crystal Skull when he should have been.
There you go.
A load of crock right there.
Yeah.
Is it me, or is blaming aliens? Is that kind of a cop out for a plot?
Blaming aliens? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not an alien horror guy, but I know some. I don't know how to ask them.
Yeah. It just seemed like, all the other Raider, Indiana Jones, like it was like pseudo plausible. Like, well, maybe he did find the Ark, or maybe this ancient temple does have a stone that not even, it's vaguely plausible, but then to invoke aliens is too, in my opinion, is too easy.
Yeah.
Well, why did this get created? Oh, aliens. Oh, okay. Well, then I guess we're all set then. There's no mystery.
Yeah, it's Deus Ex Machina. Well, God is a machine. So it means if you don't know how to solve a story whole, you just substitute something completely improbable and just say this is the kind of cure all for everything. Aliens, because the aliens have no definite properties that we know of. They can have the properties that we need for them to have to solve this riddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Well, that's a Latin term that means God is a machine. It means it's a storytelling device that is a contrivance, that's the most convenient contrivance possible to help you get through the story.
Right. Whereas like Ex Machina, that was a great movie. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, great movie. Love that movie. Yeah.
And it seemed plausible. Like, yeah, I'm sure some mad scientist could invent this thing, and crazy. Okay, so you're just steeped in writing. At what point are you transitioning to sort of film and the visuals?
When I had got married and had my daughter, and then I wrote the novel. I wrote a couple of the novels, and and I got representation. And I don't know what you know about the world, but you have to have unanimous consent among a publishing acquisitions board. So we went to all the big publishers, and we would get like some like 8 out of 10 yeses, or like some good feedback, but we didn't sell. You have to then sell the book to the publishers, and none of them wanted to buy the first book. I moved to DC. I was doing any number of different writing jobs there, working for some nonprofits, some research organizations, copywriting, copy editing. Had Julia and I, my wife and I, had our first daughter, Cecilia, and I was still writing. I published a bunch of short stories. I wasn't at that point writing any other novels. I was very discouraged, from the earlier
Oh, sure.
catastrophes, I guess you call them. And then I started to see that brand videos were incredibly creative. People would send me stuff, and they were usually short, funny videos, and I realized that's coming from a brand. I was like, we could do that. And so I had reached out to a friend who was really proficient with production, and I didn't know anything about production. And I said, I think I can create the story, the concepts. Could we team up on this? And he thought about it and then said no. And then
Right.
so I got a camera. He helped me quite a bit, but couldn't at that point, jump aboard. But I got a camera and just learned as much as I could. I learned editing. I made videos for free for little places in DC, a brewery, an eyelash, whatever you call them, salon, I don't know. And then one of the guys that lost on Shark Tank called him up, and they were like, yeah, you can do a video for us, sure. So we did a bunch of like these test videos. They were terrible, but it got me to understand some ingredients that these things need to have. And then I eventually linked up with people who were much better at production than I was. And, we were off. Listen, it wasn't like you just show up and say, this is what I do now, and then all these people are ready to pay you for it. Turns out you need to develop a portfolio, and credibility and social proof, and you learn sales. And I have tremendous respect for salespeople that I never used to have, because I just thought, I'll reach out to brands. I'll reach out and tell them, we can do this. I didn't realize that the idea of reaching out, first, that is sales. Second, you have to be good at that.
Yeah.
That's an art.
Oh, yeah.
And then third, you have to then present proposals for how you're going to use their money and what they're going to get in return. And how you can help guarantee the success of the experiment. All these little things that was probably like a 2-year detour, just figuring those things out. And so now we've gotten here, and we're in a much better position than we've ever been. We've got a good stable of loyal clients. We operate both on a retainer basis, but also on a project to project basis. We've gotten to do work for LG and Planet Fitness and New York Post, do a recurring comedy show for the Post. And we have a lot of short films coming up this year, one filming this weekend, another one filming in May. We have just did a docuseries that we're just about to do pre-production on. We did a documentary last year that won us a bunch of film festivals. Wow. We have a long way to go. I think we're probably in like the second inning. We have a lot left to do. And a lot of what I'm talking to you about is my experience as a consumer too. It's not like I don't want to come off like some kind of oracle who's been doing this for 20 years. We're in our 4th year. We're doing very good. I think we're doing very well. 5th year, I guess now. We have a long way to go, but I think it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah. Something about that. I've been binge watching as a kid. Feels like research to me. Feels like you were preparing for eventually creating. Yeah. And helping others create and tell their story too.
Who knows? I hope there was some use for that, for those are
right.
Malcolm Gladwell hours of consumption. I don't know if that's a real, man. I don't know if that's a real thing, but it would be nice to think that that wasn't totally dead time.
I guess it just depends on the show. You know, in Game of Thrones, that time was completely wasted for me. Thank you, Benioff, for that. Thank you for
He's
ruining it.
out.
I'm sure that's how a lot of people feel about Lost. But
I feel that way about Lost. I don't think
Do
they had
you?
a plan. I know they didn't have a plan. They had no plan. I think the Game of Thrones guys had a loose idea of where they wanted to go. Lost was just like, what's the weirdest thing we can do? This, all right, smoke monster in the ocean. Good. Let's do that. We'll figure it out later. Like they had no
you think they're
idea.
just riffing. They're just
Yeah,
like
they're just taking us
polar
on this
bear. Let's
journey.
go.
Irresponsible storytelling.
Interesting. So there wasn't really I mean, they stitched some kind of weird line together, but it wasn't really a cohesive story. Where you can feel that with Game of Thrones, you feel that for all the first seasons, all the initial seasons, you can feel there was an undercurrent of we're going somewhere. But yeah, you're right. Lost.
Maybe when they got away from the books, they started to kind of be.
I think so.
Flying without a net. Yeah.
And I know he told them roughly the answer or roughly the ending he had thought about. So they kind of had that in their minds already. But how they got there, they're like, okay, A, B, C, D, Z. Let's go.
Right.
All right, man. So how can people connect with you professionally? What social sites you want them to hook you up with? And then also websites for the company, any projects you want to drag attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how we think about branded narrative projects, especially when we don't yet know the brands, we will always have an introductory meeting, and we will come armed with concepts that we think will work for them. We like this process. We think it's a great way to get to know somebody, and it's obviously there's no commitment required on either party. We just kind of see if we think our sensibilities are a match, and we have those meetings usually a couple times a week, and oftentimes they create beginning of a beautiful friendship, and sometimes
Sure.
we just are not on the same page. So we love to meet brands and CMOs and creative directors and kind of see if our concepts are a fit. So we can be reached through our website, which is humanfactormedia.co. My personal email or my business email is Zack, Z-A-C-K, at humanfactormedia.co. In terms of projects, we definitely have a lot of exciting brand projects coming down, which will be posted on our social channels and on our website. We're also doing a couple of original series. We're doing our first original scripted web series next month called Making Friends, which is going to be which is about adults move to other cities and as adults have to reform their friend groups and how socially traumatizing that can be.
That's hard.
We have original interview series also about to come out on all our social channels called where we interview aspiring artists who are doing very well in their fields, very respected in their crafts, either in film or in writing or dancing or cinematography or comedy, but they haven't kind of crested the top of their field. And it's called Why Aren't You Famous? And that's coming out soon. We're excited about that. And we that's it. We're based between New York and Nashville. We have production teams in each spot. So we're always looking to collaborate and to get to know people. So feel free to reach out.
You're still living in New York?
I'm in Nashville. I moved
You're
here.
in Nashville. Hell yeah. Nashville's great.
I'm from New York, but I'm from here now. Yeah, I live here now. Yeah. No, it's a great place.
Now, does that mean you have to root for the Titans now, or are you still like Jets hardcore?
It means I'm as ambivalent as I ever was.
Gotcha. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on here, hashing out these topics, schooling me on story and ad. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for giving me a chance to hear myself talk, Casey. I appreciate it. And it was so fun, man. I appreciate it. And let's keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes front and back over here, then share this episode with someone else. That's how you show thought leadership, is just getting this in front of one person, 2 people, 3,000, whatever the case may be. Get good stuff in front of other people. We're talking about the interruption, the entertainment, the branded content, that brands are stages now, man. Wow, it's so exciting. It's time to make our way in there. And so all the brands listening, think about what your brand could do, dream a little bit around that, and then definitely reach out and get on Zach's list and have that conversation with him and his company, man. So cool, man. Zach, thank you again, dude.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Alrighty. Well, this has been another exciting episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.